Hello, I'm Lena. At a family celebration, my dad said, "She brings shame here," then locked me out. But that was just the start. For years, they lied, manipulated, and stole from me. My inheritance, my home, everything. They thought they could control me, keep me in the dark. But I've had enough. What happened next changed everything. Hook 2. They made me the outcast, but it wasn't just the lies. It was a carefully crafted trap. They were siphoning off everything I had left, even the home I grew up in. But now, I'm fighting back. What would you do if everything you knew was a lie? Stay tuned. The real battle is just beginning. This version blends the two hooks seamlessly while keeping the tone intense, emotional, and compelling enough to make the audience want to continue watching. It sets up the family betrayal, highlights the intense stakes, and promises a twist that leaves the audience on edge. The celebration was everything my father had envisioned it to be, a grand spectacle of perfection, a moment frozen in time, or at least that's what he hoped for. The venue was extravagant, lights glimmering off silver chandeliers, tables draped in white linen, sparkling glasses filled with champagne, and guests dressed to the nines. The perfect picture. But the warmth of the celebration was a thin veil that couldn't mask the tension in the air. I could feel it as I walked in, like a storm waiting to break. I wasn't sure how I had gotten here, still unsure of my place, but there I was, walking into yet another family event, praying it wouldn't end like the last one. I had convinced myself, for the briefest moment, that maybe tonight could be different. I could blend in, hold my tongue, smile politely, and pretend everything was fine. Maybe if I did this one thing right, just this once, my father would finally see me as something more than a disappointment. But that was wishful thinking. I stood at the entrance, watching the crowd mingle, listening to the laughter and the clinking of glasses. It was so easy for them. I could see it, the effortless joy they exuded, so different from the turmoil inside me. I tried to swallow it down, the nervousness building in my chest. The truth is, I had always hated these events. It wasn't about the people, it was about the pressure, the expectations. My father, Mr. Ronald, stood at the head of it all, surveying the room, his gaze as cold as the marble floors beneath our feet. He was the one who had orchestrated every detail of the evening. Nothing was left to chance, nothing out of place. From the guest list to the speeches, he had control over everything, as usual. There were others in the family, my siblings, the extended relatives, but they seemed to fade into the background, mere spectators to my father's reign. I often wondered if they saw what I saw, or if they simply went along with it, too numb to care. My mother, Ms. Eleanor, stood by his side, ever the dutiful wife. She didn't say much, just smiled and nodded when she was supposed to. I knew it pained her to be caught between us, but in the end, she was always silent. Silent when I needed her most. It was the silence that got to me, the suffocating, quiet judgment. I could feel my father's eyes on me, even when he wasn't looking directly at me. It was as if I wasn't allowed to exist outside of the image he had so meticulously created for our family. But I played along. I had to. I had learned to swallow my resentment and simply go through the motions. The clink of glasses pulled me back into reality as the announcement for the family toast echoed through the room. My heart skipped a beat. I had hoped, just hoped, that I could avoid this moment. But of course, I couldn't. To family, my father's voice rang out, rich and deep, echoing through the hall. To those who make us proud, and to those who, unfortunately, don't. I froze. The words hit like a slap to the face. The room fell into a heavy silence as all eyes turned to me. I could feel the sting of every gaze. I tried to breathe, tried to stay calm, but my chest tightened. My father's words weren't new. They were cruel, calculated, But they weren't new. This was the same game he had played my whole life. Push me to the edge, then make me crawl back for a scrap of approval. I'm sorry, but my daughter has always brought shame here, he continued, his voice booming in the space. She does not belong in our perfect family image. She has never understood what it takes to be part of this. The humiliation struck like a bolt of lightning. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. I stood there, frozen, in front of everyone who had just witnessed the worst thing my father had ever done to me. My world felt like it was collapsing in a single moment. No one stepped forward. Not my siblings, not my mother. No one. It was just me, standing there, exposed, and alone. Without a word, my father turned and locked the door to the house, leaving me outside. Holding the key in my hand, I stood there, unable to move, my mind racing. My father had done it. He had rejected me, both physically and emotionally. For the first time, I was truly cut off from the family. I had always fought to earn his love, his validation, but now I knew it was hopeless. No amount of perfection could ever satisfy him, not the way he wanted, not the way I had tried. I looked at the locked door, my hand trembling around the key. I wanted to unlock it, to go back inside, to make everything right, but I knew that I never could. Not now. Not after what had just happened. I stood there, staring at the door, listening to the muffled sounds of the celebration continuing inside. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, everything going on without me. It was as if I had never existed, as if I was just a ghost in their perfect world. The weight of it all hit me, the betrayal, the rejection, the loneliness. I had been suffocated by this family for so long, but tonight was the breaking point. I could feel the anger building inside me, but beneath it, something else was growing, something stronger than anger, a sense of resolve. I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I wasn't going to let my father and the rest of them continue to treat me like this. The world was cruel. I had always known that. But this time, I wasn't going to let it destroy me. I turned away from the door, my heart racing. The tears that had threatened to fall dried up, replaced by something harder, something more determined. I wasn't sure how I was going to fight this fight, but I was going to do it. I would make them see me. I wasn't just going to be the daughter who didn't belong. I was going to prove them wrong. The apartment felt suffocating. The silence was louder than the chaos that had unfolded at the celebration days ago. I had thought at first that I could shake it off, that I could walk away from it, bury it beneath the piles of work that awaited me and the thousands of distractions that life could offer. But there it was, still hanging in the air like a thick fog, creeping into every corner of my mind. I sat at the small dining table, a cup of coffee untouched before me. The photo of my family, taken at one of those rare moments when we all managed to smile at the same time, lay face up, mocking me. The stark contrast between that image and the reality of my life now hit me like a gut punch. The family I once hoped to belong to be seen by, was nothing more than a facade, one that I had desperately tried to fit into for years. I picked up the photo, tracing my fingers over the faces frozen in time. There was a younger me, smiling, hopeful. I remembered those days when I thought I could win their approval, when I believed I could make them proud. But that girl, she was long gone. What was left now was a woman who had been torn down over and over, always striving to be enough, but never quite making it. The warm image of the family I had wanted so badly felt distant, like a dream I could never touch. The truth? They had never really seen me, not for who I was, but for who they needed me to be. A perfect daughter, a perfect reflection of their carefully constructed image. But I was never going to be that. I let out a deep breath and sat back in my chair, placing the photo down on the table with a soft thud. The realization that had been gnawing at me for days now settled in. I was never going to get what I wanted from them. But more than that, I realized I had spent my entire life fighting for something that was never going to come. I wasn't sure how long I had been sitting there when the shrill ring of my phone broke through the silence, pulling me out of my thoughts. I stared at the screen. The number was unfamiliar, but something about it felt important. Hesitant, I answered. Miss Lena? A voice on the other end said. The voice was formal, detached. This is Robert Harris, an attorney representing your father's estate. My stomach dropped. My father's name echoed in my head, as if it were a curse, a constant reminder of all the pain and rejection he had caused. I clenched my jaw, trying to steady my breath. What's this about? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. I'm calling in regard to your father's will, Robert Harris continued. There are some legal matters that require your attention. Your presence is necessary for some of the discussions. It concerns assets tied to your father's estate that you might be entitled to. I froze. The words barely made sense. The lawyer's call, the mention of my father's estate, it was too much to process. For a moment, all I could do was breathe, trying to clear the fog in my head. What kind of legal matters? I asked, trying to sound as composed as possible, though I felt my pulse quicken. There's a clause in the will, something that wasn't disclosed to you, the lawyer said. I can't discuss the specifics over the phone, but it's crucial that we meet. It could change things for you. My heart raced, a mix of confusion and a tentative glimmer of hope rising in my chest. What are you talking about? What do you mean by change things? The lawyer paused for a moment, as if weighing his next words carefully. I'll explain everything in person. When can we arrange a meeting? It's urgent. My mind spun with possibilities, none of them making sense. For so long, I had believed that my father had kept me in the dark, shut me out of everything that mattered. And now, a part of me couldn't help but wonder, was this my chance? Was this the moment I'd been waiting for? I'll meet you, I said, my voice steadier now, a newfound resolve filling me. Tell me where and when. The lawyer gave me the details, and I hung up. My thoughts were a blur. This was not how I had imagined my day unfolding. I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand, trying to process the gravity of what had just happened. It was hard to believe, even harder to accept. But one thing was clear. I had been handed an opportunity. I thought about the years of rejection, of silence. I thought about the way my father had shut me out, how he had never truly cared. The man I had once hoped to gain approval from was the one who had crushed me, but now there was a chance, something in this will, something that could shift the balance. What if I could finally confront him, confront the family, and take control of my life? What if the key to everything was hidden in those legal documents? But then doubt crept in. What if this was just another trap? What if this was some calculated move on my father's part to get me involved again, only to crush me once more? I shook my head, trying to clear the fog. The lawyer's words kept echoing in my mind. A clause. A secret. It was too much to process, but the seed had been planted. I couldn't turn back now. I pulled myself to my feet and paced the small apartment. My heart was heavy, but there was a fire building within me. This was my chance, my opportunity to stand up and take control. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid. I didn't know where this path would lead, but I knew one thing for sure. It was mine to walk. I reached for my phone again, but this time, it wasn't to make a call. It was to look up the name of the lawyer, to find out what I was really getting myself into. But before I could, my phone buzzed again. I looked at the screen. This time, it was a message from my mother. Lena, I'm sorry, it said. I never meant for things to go this way. Can we talk? I stared at the message, a knot forming in my stomach. The woman who had stood by silently, letting my father tear me apart, was now apologizing. I couldn't decide if I should respond. I didn't know if it was too late for her apologies. I didn't know if I was ready to hear her excuses. But one thing was clear: the game had changed. The lawyer's office was colder than I had imagined. The sterile, quiet atmosphere made me feel as if I had walked into a place where secrets were kept carefully locked away. The polished wood desk, the stack of legal papers, the heavy scent of old books, it all felt too formal, too distant. I sat down across from the lawyer, trying to hold my composure. Robert Harris wasn't anything like I expected. He was middle-aged, dressed in a perfectly pressed suit, his glasses reflecting the dim office light. I couldn't help but feel like I was about to embark on a journey into the heart of the family I had once desperately wanted to belong to. "Miss Lena," he said, his voice low and methodical. "I know this might come as a surprise, but there are things you need to know about your father's estate. For years, you've been kept in the dark." His words hit me harder than I anticipated. The bitterness I felt toward my father was still fresh, but hearing this from a stranger, a man who probably saw all kinds of family dysfunctions daily, made it somehow more real. This wasn't just some emotional mess in my head. It was now legal, binding, and undeniable. I nodded, feeling my heart race. "What exactly are you talking about?" He shifted through a few papers before pulling out a file and pushing it toward me. "There are clauses in your father's will that have never been disclosed to you. The family has kept this information hidden, and the time has come for you to know." I stared at the file, hesitant. The tension in the room was thick, and I felt the weight of my father's secrets pressing down on me. It was one thing to know the family dynamics were manipulative, but another to have it confirmed in such a blunt way. "You're telling me," I began slowly, "that my father kept secrets about his will from me all these years?" Robert nodded gravely. "Yes. And these secrets could change the power dynamics in your favor." My mind spun. How could this be? How could my father have done something like this? After all these years of feeling abandoned, rejected, I thought I knew the worst of it. But now, this was something entirely different. Twist S1. Robert leaned back in his chair and continued. "The will was meant to stay secret, but your father's intentions were clear. He didn't want you to know. That is, until now." I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't know whether I should be angry, relieved, or both. Part of me wanted to tear it all apart, but another part hesitated. What did this mean for me? What did it mean for my future? "You'll find that the will contains not only instructions for the family's assets," Robert continued, "but also some clauses that were meant to stay hidden. Your father's intentions were to pass the family legacy down to your older siblings, excluding you." I swallowed hard, the familiar sting of rejection cutting through me like a knife. But then, Robert's next words made my heart stop. "However, there's a portion of the estate that he left specifically to you. You were meant to inherit a part of it, though this clause was never spoken about." Twist S2. He slid a sealed envelope across the table, placing it before me with a faint sigh. "Inside this envelope, you'll find the codicil to the will. It contains the exact details. But it's not just a matter of inheritance. There's more at play here." I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as I reached for the envelope. The secrecy surrounding this felt ominous. I stared at the seal, wondering if opening it would reveal a truth I wasn't ready to face. But I couldn't stop myself. My hand trembled slightly as I tore open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed neatly with the kind of legal precision that made my heart race even faster. The codicil was short, but its impact was immense. It confirmed everything I had feared. My father had been manipulating everything, including his will. He had planned to disinherit me, leaving everything to my siblings. But at the very end of the document, something changed. I was named the sole heir to a portion of the estate, a portion that had always been kept from me. Twist S3. As I read the clause, I realized something even more gut-wrenching. There was mention of my mother's involvement, or rather, her silence. The codicil hinted that she had known about the disinheritance and had kept it from me. The idea that my mother, the person who had always been there, could have been complicit in this betrayal was almost too much to bear. A mixture of triumph and devastation washed over me. I was the heir to something, yes, but it felt hollow. This victory felt tainted by the knowledge that my own mother had been part of the lie. Twist S4. The final paragraph of the codicil sent a shiver through me. There was mention of an attempt to alter the will legally, an attempt to strip me of my rightful inheritance without my knowledge. The idea that this could still be contested was the final blow. My father's control over my life had always been suffocating, but now I saw it had been far more calculated than I ever imagined. Robert explained the situation further, outlining the potential legal ramifications. You could challenge the will, but there are risks involved. The family has already made their own plans, and this will could ignite a firestorm. I sat there, reeling. My mind was a mess of emotions. Anger, betrayal, and a growing sense of resolve all clashed inside me. This was more than just about money. It was about reclaiming my life, reclaiming my voice. Twist S5. I closed the codicil and looked at Robert. What should I do next? He didn't answer right away. Instead, his eyes lingered on me, as if weighing the moment. That's for you to decide, Ms. Lena, but this is your chance to challenge everything your father has done, and everything the family has tried to bury. But the doubt was still there, gnawing at me. Was I ready to fight? Ready to tear the family apart to uncover the truth? Twist S6. As I sat in the silence of the office, a text message flashed on my phone. It was from Thomas, my estranged brother. He wanted to meet. The message was vague, but his words were clear. We need to talk about everything. The hope, the anger, the confusion, it all swirled together. Was Thomas part of the family's manipulations? Or was he the ally I had been waiting for? I didn't know the answer yet, but for the first time in a long while, I was ready to find out. I stood in front of the mirror, my reflection staring back at me, but it wasn't just me anymore. It was a version of me that had been held back, repressed for too long. My hand clenched into a fist, the weight of the decisions I had to make pressing down on me like a heavy storm cloud. The events of the past few days had sent shockwaves through my life, and now it was time to face them head on. No more hiding, no more pretending everything was fine. The phone buzzed on the table, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Amanda, the only person who had been a constant support through this mess. She knew about my father, knew the manipulations, the games, and the cruel power dynamics that had been my entire life. Her message was simple, but it cut through my doubts like a knife. It's time. You can't keep letting them control you. Fight back. I stared at the screen, the words echoing in my mind. You can't keep letting them control you. Amanda was right. It was time to take control, or I would continue to be at the mercy of a family that had never once truly cared about me. The weight of my father's rejection, my mother's silence, and my siblings' indifference crushed me. But now, it was my turn. My heart pounded as I realized this was the moment I either stayed silent or stepped into my own power. Lena. I'm doing this. I sent the text to Amanda, my hands trembling slightly. The decision had been made, and there was no turning back. I had to confront the family. I couldn't let them continue to dictate my life, my worth, my future. The plan was simple. Start with the will. It was my leverage, my weapon in this battle for control. I needed to confront them with the truth, the facts, and force them to acknowledge what they had done. But as I made my way to my father's office, I couldn't shake the anxiety that clung to me. This wasn't just about the inheritance. This was about everything I had suffered at their hands. Every time I had been overlooked, belittled, dismissed, it all came rushing back. The familiar sting of rejection flared in my chest, but this time it was different. This time I wasn't the victim. I was going to fight. I entered the office, where old family photos lined the walls, reminders of a time when everything seemed whole. Now, they felt like cruel mockery. I walked to my father's desk, the place where so many of his decisions had been made, decisions that had never considered me. I opened the drawer, and my fingers brushed against old files, papers, and documents. But it was the envelope that caught my attention, the one I had seen before, the envelope containing the hidden codicil, the one that had been kept from me. Twist S1. I took a deep breath before opening it. The words on the paper were undeniable. My father's intentions were clear. He had tried to erase me from his life, to write me out of everything. But the codicil told a different story. There was a portion of the estate that was mine. My inheritance. His betrayal was not just emotional, it was legal. He had tried to cut me out, but the truth was in black and white. I wasn't going to let him win. I stood there for a moment, staring at the paper in disbelief. My father had always been a man of power, and I had always been the child who never measured up. But now, in this moment, the tables had turned. The truth was mine, and I was going to make sure everyone knew it. Twist S2. As I gathered the documents, a wave of clarity washed over me. I wasn't going to be passive anymore. The years of manipulation, the years of fighting for approval, it ended now. I wasn't going to let my father's control define me any longer. I couldn't let my mother's silence be the last word. It was time to claim my place, my power, in this family. The thought of confronting them terrified me. I had always been afraid of how they would react, but now I had the truth on my side, and that gave me strength. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from my brother Thomas. He had been silent for so long, but now he wanted to meet. I had no idea what he wanted, but the timing was too coincidental. After everything that had happened, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I agreed to meet him. Maybe he had something to offer, maybe not. But I wasn't about to back down now. Twist S3. That night, the family dinner arrived. The tension in the room was palpable. I could feel the weight of their stares on me, the judgment in the air. I had prepared myself for this moment, but nothing could have prepared me for the way my father's eyes narrowed when I walked in. I sat down at the table, the unease settling deep in my stomach. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was an outsider in my own family. They all pretended everything was fine, but I knew better. This dinner was supposed to be a peaceful gathering, a reunion of sorts. But instead, it felt like a battlefield, and I was the one on the front lines. Twist S4. As the meal went on, I couldn't stay silent anymore. The tension was unbearable. I had to confront them, to make them face the truth. I looked at my father and spoke, my voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. I know about the will. I know what you did. I know how you tried to erase me. The room went silent. My father's face twisted in anger, but I didn't flinch. I was done being intimidated. He tried to downplay everything, dismissing my words, but I pressed on. You can't hide behind lies and manipulation anymore. I know the truth. You've never cared about me. And you never will. Twist S5. To my surprise, Thomas stood up. She's right, he said, his voice firm. We've all been living in this facade for years. It's time the truth came out. The shock was evident on everyone's face. My father glared at Thomas, but for the first time, I saw something different in my brother. He wasn't just defending me, he was challenging the system, the very power structure that had kept us all in line for so long. The dinner ended in chaos. The family didn't know how to react, but I didn't care anymore. I had made my stand, and I was ready for whatever came next. Twist S6. As I walked away from the table, the weight of everything hit me. I had finally done it. I had confronted them. But the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. The family had already started distancing themselves from me. Their cold, dismissive messages made it clear I was an outcast now. But I didn't care. The truth was out, and that was all that mattered. I had taken control, and now I was ready to fight for what was mine. I stared at the letter from my father's lawyer, my hand trembling as I gripped it. The words on the page were clear. Stay silent or face legal consequences. The audacity of it. After everything they had put me through, now they wanted me to back down, to remain quiet and pretend none of it ever happened. The idea of being silenced once again filled me with a cold fury. I had been through enough in my life, constantly fighting for validation, for acknowledgement, and now, when I had finally discovered the truth, they wanted to shut me down. No, this time, I wasn't backing down. The weight of the letter pressed on my chest, but it also lit a fire within me. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. As I sat in my apartment, staring at the letter, my phone buzzed. It was a call from my mother. I let it ring for a moment, unsure whether I wanted to answer. But I did. I had to. "Lena, sweetheart," my mother's voice crackled through the line, soft and hesitant. "You need to stop all this. You're causing too much trouble. The family, this is tearing us apart." I closed my eyes and took a slow, steadying breath. Her words felt like a slap, but I refused to let them break me. "Mom," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I'm not going to stay silent anymore. I'm not going to pretend that everything is okay when it's not. You don't understand. Your father. This isn't how we do things," she replied, the guilt in her voice unmistakable. "You don't know what you're doing." I felt my chest tighten. "You're right, Mom. I don't know what I'm doing, but I do know this. I'm not going to be your little girl anymore, the one who's always overlooked, always ignored. I won't let them get away with this." There was silence on the other end. A long, painful silence. I didn't know what else to say. I had said everything I needed to say. But then she spoke again, her voice small and strained. "I don't want to lose you, Lena. Please." It was the first time in my life I had ever heard her sound so vulnerable, so unsure. But it didn't matter anymore. "You already have," I said, my heart sinking as I ended the call. Twist S1. As I set the phone down, I felt a rush of anger surge through me. The pain, the betrayal, it all came crashing down. My father, my mother, my family. They had kept me in the dark for years, manipulating me, treating me like I didn't matter. But now, I was done being their pawn. I wasn't going to be silenced, not this time. They didn't get to control my life anymore. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Thomas, my brother. He wanted to meet. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to push him away. But another part of me needed to understand where he stood in all of this. Was he with me? Or was he playing both sides just like everyone else? I didn't have time to waste. I agreed to meet him. The only thing that mattered now was uncovering the truth. And I needed to know if I could trust him. The cafe was quiet when I arrived. The soft hum of the coffee machine in the corner was the only sound that filled the space. I spotted Thomas sitting at a table by the window, his back to me. He looked just like our father, stubborn, unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes that I couldn't quite place. I sat down across from him, my heart pounding. This was it. This was the moment that would either bring us closer or tear us further apart. "I didn't think you'd show up," Thomas said, his voice flat. I folded my arms across my chest, bracing myself. I had to know the truth. "What's really going on, Thomas?" He looked around the room, as if checking to see if anyone was listening, then leaned in closer. "I didn't want you involved in all this, Lena. I didn't want you to know what our father was planning." I raised an eyebrow. "You knew? You knew all along?" He nodded, but his gaze was heavy. "Yeah. He promised me a bigger share of the estate if I stayed quiet, if I helped keep you out of the picture." I blinked, stunned. You've been complicit in this?" "I didn't have a choice," he said, his voice rising. "Do you think I wanted to be a part of it? Do you think I wanted to betray you?" The anger that had been simmering inside me started to boil over. "So, all this time you've been sitting on the sidelines, letting it happen. You didn't think about how it affected me. You didn't think about how I've been treated all these years?" "I was trying to protect you," he shot back, his fists clenched. "But I couldn't do it alone. You don't understand what it's like, Lena. He's dangerous. If I hadn't done what he said, I'd have been nothing. I didn't have a choice." Twist S2. The truth stung. Betrayal. I had trusted him. But at least he was being honest now, even if it was too late. "And now? What are you going to do? Just sit there and keep your mouth shut, or are you going to help me?" He hesitated, looking down at the table. "I'm trying to gather evidence. I'm scared, Lena. He's not the man you think he is." Twist S3. "I don't care if you're scared," I said, my voice low but firm. "I need you to stand with me. This isn't just about the money anymore. It's about our family's power structure. We can't keep letting him manipulate us." He met my gaze, his eyes filled with guilt. "I'm with you. But I'm scared, Lena. I don't know how far he'll go to keep control." I nodded, understanding the fear in his voice. But this was bigger than fear. This was about standing up for what was right. And if I had to go through this fight alone, I would. I left the cafe feeling more conflicted than ever. The weight of the truth, the burden of knowing my own brother had been complicit in all of it, hung heavily on me. But there was no turning back now. Twist S4. The next day, I met with my attorney. The legal battle was just beginning, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. But as I sat in the lawyer's office, going through the paperwork, a sense of resolve settled over me. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for myself, for my dignity, for my right to be seen as more than just a pawn in a twisted family game. Twist S5. The lawyer handed me a file containing evidence from an anonymous source, someone who had been watching the family's every move. The tip was crucial, and it made the fight feel even more real. There were people willing to help me. "Are you ready?" the lawyer asked. I looked at the stack of papers in front of me. The fight was just beginning, and I wasn't going to back down. This time, I was standing up for myself. The moment I sent the message to my family, telling them I was moving forward with the case, I knew there was no going back. The battle had begun. And no matter what they threw at me, I wasn't going to let them win. The weight of my decision pressed down on me like a storm cloud. I had made it clear. I wasn't backing down. But as I walked down the street toward my apartment, I could feel the intensity building. My family was not going to take this lightly. My father's power, my mother's passive manipulation, Thomas's secret role. It was all escalating now, like a dam breaking under pressure. I didn't even have time to breathe before my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text message from an unknown number. I opened it, my heart sinking as I read the words. "Your legal efforts are doomed. We know everything about your past. Just walk away, or your life will be destroyed." My blood ran cold. How did they know? This wasn't just some idle threat. This was a message that had personal details, things I had long buried, things I never wanted anyone to know. It was a warning, clear as day. Someone had been feeding them information. I held the phone tightly in my hand, clenching my jaw. This wasn't just about the will anymore. This was about me, my life, my dignity. My family was trying to destroy me, and they were using everything they had to do it. But I couldn't show fear. I couldn't let them see how much this shook me. I immediately forwarded the message to my lawyer. There was no turning back now. I wasn't going to let them break me. That evening, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Thomas. He wanted to meet in person. I hesitated for a moment, my mind racing. What could he want now? After everything, after he had already confessed his role in the family's games, was there anything left to say? Still, I agreed. If he was really trying to help, maybe I could finally get to the heart of what was really going on. I needed to know where he stood, what he knew, and if he was truly on my side. The cafe we met at was quiet, tucked away on a side street, the perfect place for a conversation that needed to stay hidden. I found him sitting at a corner booth, his eyes darting nervously around the room. As soon as he saw me, he waved me over, his face a mix of guilt and uncertainty. "You came," he said quietly as I sat down across from him. "I wasn't sure you would." I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You've been lying to me, Thomas. I need the truth. What else haven't you told me?" He shifted in his seat, looking like he was about to break. "It's not that simple, Lena. I've been trying to protect you, but I don't know if I can anymore." He paused, gathering his words, and then continued. "I wasn't just promised a bigger share of the estate. I was promised everything, in exchange for my silence. Your father. He didn't just want to keep you out. He wanted to control everything, every aspect of the family. He needed me to help him do it." I felt a stab in my chest, the betrayal cutting deeper than I expected. "So you've been complicit in all of this for years?" I asked, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I didn't have a choice," he snapped, his face flushing. "If I didn't play along, I'd be out, just like you." Twist S1. The weight of his confession hung in the air. I had always known Thomas was weak, but this was beyond what I had imagined. He had sacrificed his own sister, his own flesh and blood, to get ahead. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my composure. "So, what now? You just expect me to forgive you, to trust you after all this?" "I never wanted to hurt you, Lena, but I'm telling you now because it's over. Everything we've known is falling apart," Thomas said, looking around, lowering his voice. "Dad's making his final move. He's going to try and force you to drop the case one way or another. You can't trust him. You can't trust anyone." My mind was spinning. Betrayal was one thing. But this, it was like watching the world I knew crumble before my eyes. How deep did this go? How far had they all gone to break me down? Twist S2. Thomas continued. "I've been trying to gather evidence for you, to help, but it's dangerous. Dad's already digging into your past, using private investigators to discredit you. If he thinks you'll fight back, he'll destroy you." I stood up abruptly. "I don't need you to protect me anymore. You should have stepped up a long time ago. But you didn't." My voice was steady, but inside I was shaking. "I can't afford to trust anyone anymore. I have to finish this, and I will, with or without you." The next day, things moved fast. My lawyer and I began filing formal legal documents, challenging the will. The process was overwhelming, but I was determined to see this through. Twist S3. But the stakes kept rising. I was blindsided by a new revelation. An anonymous tip came through, alerting me to a hidden clause in the will, one that could potentially invalidate my father's entire claim to the estate if we could prove fraud. It was the break I needed, but I knew my family wouldn't go down without a fight. The tension felt unbearable. The legal process was a battlefield. Every step was met with opposition. But every time I thought of giving up, I thought of the message I received from Thomas about how far my father would go, and I realized this wasn't just about a will. This was about freedom. It was about reclaiming my life. Twist S4. But my family wasn't going to make it easy. A new counterclaim was filed against me, accusing me of financial misconduct. It felt like a punch to the gut, but it only made me more determined. They weren't going to bury me. Not now, not ever. The pressure was mounting, and my family was pushing harder than ever. Social media posts started circulating, defaming me, twisting the truth. My friends, the people I thought I could rely on, began to distance themselves. The walls were closing in, but I wasn't backing down. I couldn't. Twist S5. Then came the video message from Eleanor. She looked tired, her face drawn. Lena, what you're doing is ruining the family name. It's making us all look bad. You're turning everyone against you. I felt the fury rise in my chest. I'm not the one destroying the family, Mom. You are. All of you. And just like that, I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about my family trying to erase me, trying to take everything that made me who I was. They were trying to take my identity, but they were going to regret that, because I wasn't going down without a fight. Twist S6. Thomas reached out again, apologizing for his previous behavior, but his fear was palpable. Lena, you need to be careful. I'm telling you, Dad's planning to cut you out of the will completely. He's not playing games anymore. My heart sank. This was no longer just a fight for money. It was a battle for my survival. The final piece of the puzzle was in my hands, but would it be enough to defeat them? I knew that the end was near. One last move, and the game would be over. But as the walls closed in, I couldn't help but wonder if I was already too late. The days leading up to the final confrontation felt like a storm was gathering. I could feel the tension thickening in the air, but for once, I wasn't scared. I was ready. For too long, my family had held me under their thumb, manipulating me, controlling me. But this time, I was the one in charge. I wasn't going to let them get away with it anymore. I sat in my apartment, the papers from my lawyer spread out in front of me, all the evidence I had gathered over the past few weeks. It was time. My father, my mother, and the rest of them, they had underestimated me. They thought they could break me, silence me, but I was still standing, and now I had the power to take them down. The plan was simple: expose their lies, their manipulation, and their deceit. I'd already uncovered more than enough to destroy the family's grip on the estate, but there was one more thing I had to do. Twist S1. I had discovered a legal loophole, something I hadn't expected. A clause in the will that could dismantle everything they'd fought so hard to keep. If I could prove this in court, it would invalidate my father's entire claim over the inheritance. It was a game changer. I immediately called my lawyer, relaying the information. But even as I did, doubt crept in. Was this enough? Would it be enough to win? I wasn't sure, but I had no other choice. The fight had already begun, and I had to see it through. Twist S2. The next blow came when my private investigator uncovered something even darker. My father was trying to forge a document, one that would strengthen his case in court. I had the proof now. He was willing to go as far as committing fraud to keep control over the estate. I felt the power shift in my favor, but I also knew this was far from over. The stakes had never been higher. The battle was heating up. I was done being passive, done being the victim. Now I was fighting back with everything I had. Twist S3. The moment of truth came when I received an anonymous tip. My mother, Eleanor, had been hiding more documents, files that could turn the tide of the case in my favor. I didn't hesitate. I called her. I confronted her privately, my voice steady but firm. I know you've been hiding something, Mom. I need those documents, and I need them now. Eleanor hesitated. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the hesitation. Lena, you don't understand, she said, her voice shaking. What you're doing, it's destroying everything. The family, the business, everything. I didn't let her words break me. You've been part of this the whole time, haven't you? You've been keeping secrets, lying to me. Hand over the documents, or I'll expose everything. Twist S4. She handed them over reluctantly, but not without a warning. If you do this, there's no going back, Lena. You won't be able to fix what's broken. The truth was out, but as soon as I thought I had it under control, my father made his move. He filed a counterclaim, accusing me of forgery. His strategy was clear. He was trying to bury me under more lies, more accusations. It was like nothing I did could be enough to stop him. But I wasn't backing down. I couldn't. The rage burned in me. My family's betrayal had cut deeper than I thought, but I had to keep going. This wasn't just about the estate anymore. It was about my life, my identity. And I wasn't going to let them destroy me without a fight. The emotional toll was weighing on me. Every move I made, every decision I took, felt like it could be my last. I had started questioning everything. Was it worth it? Was I becoming too consumed by anger and resentment? I wasn't sure anymore. Twist S5. My moment of vulnerability came when an old friend reached out to me. Lena, what's going on with you? She asked, concern in her eyes. I've never seen you like this. You're letting the battle consume you. Is it worth it? Her words hit me hard. I had spent so much time fighting for justice, for a victory, that I hadn't stopped to think about what I was losing in the process. My anger, my bitterness, it was swallowing me whole. But even in my darkest moments, I couldn't stop. The fight wasn't just for me, it was for everyone who had ever been hurt, manipulated, and left behind by my family's lies. I couldn't stop now. I took a deep breath, wiped away the tears that had been threatening to fall, and made my decision. I wouldn't let this define me. I wouldn't let them win. The war was escalating, and I could feel it. My family was desperate now. They were throwing everything they had at me. Threats, lies, manipulation. They hired private investigators to follow me, to find any weakness they could exploit. Twist S6. Then it got worse. I found out that Thomas had been feeding information to our father, undermining me from behind the scenes. The betrayal stung worse than I could have imagined. I confronted him, but he didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He just told me he had his own family to protect. I felt the anger bubbling up again, but this time, it wasn't just betrayal I felt. It was the clarity that came with realizing the full extent of my family's manipulation. They weren't just trying to take the estate. They were trying to erase me. Twist S7. Then came the most shocking revelation yet. A mysterious person reached out to me, offering inside information. I met with them in secret, and what I uncovered about my father's past left me speechless. This wasn't just a fight for money, it was about uncovering the darkness of a man I thought I knew. The secrets kept piling up, and I realized that the web my family had woven was far larger than I had ever imagined. But now I had the pieces. I had everything I needed to take them down. The final confrontation was coming. The moment of truth was almost here. I knew I had everything I needed to win. But my father, my family, they were dangerous, and they weren't going down without a fight. Twist S8. Armed with all the evidence I had gathered, I made my final move. I filed a motion in court that would expose everything: the lies, the manipulation, the forgery. I was going to make them pay. I was going to win. The shock on their faces when they saw what I had presented in court was almost satisfying. My father, ever the manipulator, tried to cover his tracks, but it was too late. The truth was out, and he couldn't escape it anymore. For the first time in this entire fight, I felt a rush of triumph. This was my moment. I had won. But as the judge raised the gavel, a chill ran through me, because I knew that this fight wasn't over yet. There was one last card my father could play. The clock was ticking. I could feel the weight of the final confrontation settling on my shoulders, but I wasn't afraid. For the first time in years, I was in control. My plan was clear, and the stakes couldn't be higher. This was my last chance to take back everything that had been stolen from me: my dignity, my inheritance, my life. The evidence I had collected over the past few months was staggering. Every lie, every betrayal, every manipulation had been documented. My father and the rest of the family thought they could keep me in the dark forever, but they were wrong. Now it was my turn to shine a light on the darkness they'd worked so hard to hide. Twist S1. Out of nowhere, I received a message from an old ally, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. It was a tip-off about my father's hidden assets, offshore accounts, secret investments, and transactions that had never been reported. This was the final piece of the puzzle. It was the ammunition I needed to destroy my family's entire financial foundation. I immediately called my lawyer and passed on the information. We were going all in. This wasn't just about a will anymore. It was about exposing my father's entire empire of lies. Twist S2. As if the universe had aligned, my legal team uncovered a massive revelation. A significant portion of the family wealth had been funneled into a secret offshore account. If I could prove this, it would give me a solid foundation to challenge my father's entire claim to the estate. The truth was on my side now, and there was no turning back. With everything in place, I steeled myself. The battle ahead would be fierce, but it was time to face my family head-on. I had no intention of walking away empty-handed. The courtroom was a battlefield, and I was ready for war. As I stepped into the room, the weight of the moment hit me hard. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming my life. I could feel the eyes of the people in the room, the quiet whispers, but I didn't flinch. This was my fight. Twist S3. I presented the evidence, every document, every detail, laying bare my family's lies for all to see. My father tried to discredit me immediately, accusing me of tampering with documents. His voice was shaky, but he tried to maintain control. As the family's defense crumbled before my eyes, I stood firm. There was no turning back now. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension. I could see my father's fury, his frustration, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had the truth on my side, and there was nothing he could do to stop me. Twist S4. Then came the unexpected turn. My mother, Eleanor, my silent accomplice all these years, spoke up. She revealed that she had been quietly gathering evidence of my father's manipulations for years. She had been too scared to act on it before, but now, with the weight of everything crashing down, she couldn't stay silent any longer. Her words were a game changer. The look on my father's face was priceless. For the first time, it was him on the defensive. The family's empire was crumbling, and I wasn't about to let it stop there. As the trial progressed, I felt the full force of my family's betrayal weigh on me. The emotional toll was exhausting, but I couldn't afford to falter now. The final blow was coming, and I would deliver it myself. Twist S5. Just as I thought I had all the answers, the last piece of the puzzle fell into place. I received an audio recording, my father admitting, in his own words, to orchestrating the entire scheme. The truth was finally out. I had the ultimate weapon. I walked into the courtroom, calm and determined, the recording ready to play. My father's face drained of color as the sound of his voice filled the room. He couldn't deny it anymore. Twist S6. In a last-ditch effort to salvage his dignity, my father admitted to everything. But instead of apologizing, he tried to justify his actions, claiming he was protecting the family legacy. His words only fueled my resolve. He didn't understand. This wasn't about legacy. It was about him taking everything from me, from us, for years. The emotional confrontation hit me harder than I expected. All the pain, all the years of torment came rushing back. I let myself feel it, just for a moment. But then, I refocused. This was my fight. And I was winning. Twist S7. At the last moment, a crucial witness stepped forward. Someone who had been too intimidated to speak before. They corroborated everything I had said. My father's empire was unraveling before my eyes. The truth was out, and he couldn't stop it. I watched as my father's world began to collapse. For the first time in my life, I felt the rush of victory. I had won. But the emptiness that followed was overwhelming. Was it really worth it? Was this really the life I wanted, even after everything? The cost of victory was something I hadn't fully understood until now. I had won the legal battle, but in doing so, I had torn apart everything that had once been my family. The truth had come at a price. Twist S8. Then, in the midst of the aftermath, I received a letter from my father. He apologized for everything. The letter was filled with regret and sorrow, but it didn't change the past. The years of manipulation, the betrayal, the lies, none of it could be erased with a few words on paper. I thought about the path I had taken, all the sacrifices, all the pain. Was it worth it? The victory didn't feel like a win anymore. It felt like the end of something much bigger. Twist S9. A private meeting with my brother Thomas offered a moment of clarity. He finally admitted his role in the manipulation and expressed his desire to reconcile. It was raw, honest, and painful. But now I had a choice to make. Forgive him or continue walking away from the family that had destroyed me. The emotional weight of the decision hit me hard. I had won the legal battle, but could I ever win back what had been lost? As I stood there, the weight of it all pressing down on me, I realized I had to make a choice. It wasn't just about money or the inheritance anymore. It was about moving forward, about reclaiming my life. The past would always be a part of me, but I couldn't let it define me. I knew the road ahead would be long, but I was ready for whatever came next. Just as I thought I was walking away, I saw him. My heart stopped. The one person I didn't expect to see today was standing there, watching me with those familiar eyes. The aftermath of the legal battle was settling in. The courtroom had emptied, and so had the emotional weight that had carried me through the last several months. The fight was over. The victory was mine. But the peace I expected was nowhere to be found. The victory I'd fought so hard for felt hollow, like a part of me had been lost in the process. The family I once knew was gone. My father's empire crumbled, but in its place, there was only emptiness. I couldn't help but reflect on what I had lost, not just the inheritance, but my family. The bond I once thought unbreakable had been shattered, and the people I grew up with, who should have been my support, were now strangers in my life. My childhood dreams, those hopes for a future filled with love and unity, were now just that, dreams. The innocence I had once carried was gone, replaced by a cold, calculated determination to survive. Twist S1. As I tried to process it all, I realized that the public's perception of my victory was divided. Some people saw me as a hero, a woman who stood up for herself and took down a corrupt family. But others, the ones who didn't know the truth, viewed me as the destroyer of a family legacy. The weight of this judgment was heavy. Was I really the villain? Was it all worth it? I could feel the guilt eating at me, pulling me into doubt. But then, a strange sense of empowerment crept in. I had fought for what was right, even when it meant going against everything I had known. Twist S2. The phone rang one morning, and the voice on the other end was one I hadn't expected. It was my mother. She apologized for not being there for me when I needed her the most. She acknowledged that she had been complicit in the lies, but she was now truly sorry. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was a start. Her apology didn't erase the years of neglect, but it opened the door for healing. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her fully, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like there was a chance for something new. Maybe I wasn't completely alone after all. The days that followed were filled with moments of reflection. I needed to find peace, to reconnect with myself. The weight of everything I had been through had left me feeling like a stranger in my own life. It was time to step away and begin healing. I decided to take a break, leave everything behind for a while, and find some clarity. I booked a trip to a place I used to visit as a child. The memories of those simpler days lingered in the back of my mind, and I hoped they would help me reconnect with who I used to be before everything fell apart. Twist S3. As I walked along the familiar streets, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years. A former acquaintance, someone who had always admired my strength but had never said so. We spent hours talking, and the conversation turned into an unexpected friendship. For the first time in a long while, I felt understood. The journey didn't stop there. I began journaling, documenting everything I had been through, the pain, the anger, the betrayal. It all came pouring out. It was a cathartic release, one that I hadn't expected would help as much as it did. Alongside this, I began therapy, learning to forgive myself for my part in the family's destruction. Twist S4. Then, out of the blue, a job offer came in from another state. A fresh start, a new life. It was tempting, a chance to leave everything behind and begin anew, free from the weight of my past. The opportunity was too good to pass up, but it also felt like a decision that could define the rest of my life. The choice wasn't easy, but for the first time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, I deserved a fresh start. But moving on wasn't as easy as I thought. The relationships I had once held dear were still fractured. The wounds in my heart had begun to heal, but they left scars. My brother Thomas was still a part of my life, though everything had changed between us. I knew I had to face him, to rebuild the bridge that had been burned. But it wasn't going to be easy. Twist S5. When I reached out to him, the conversation was heavy. He admitted that he had felt abandoned by me when I chose to fight back. But he also understood why I had done it. He had been a victim of our father's manipulation too. We were both victims in different ways. Slowly we began to rebuild, but there was still a distance between us. I had a breakthrough with my therapist. It wasn't just my family's actions that had hurt me. It was also my own decisions. The things I had done to protect myself that had left others behind. Healing was a process, and forgiveness was the first step. Twist S6. Then, out of nowhere, my father reached out. He begged for forgiveness, telling me he was sorry for everything. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The final decision had already been made. He was no longer a part of my life. I had to let go. Now, with everything behind me, the question remained, what do I want moving forward? Twist S7. I visited the house I had grown up in, the house that had once been a symbol of family and warmth, But it was empty now, sold. The place I had once called home was no longer mine. I walked through the empty rooms, taking in the memories. It was time to let go, to stop holding on to a past that was no longer mine. Twist S8. The final piece of the puzzle came when I received a message from a former friend who had been following my journey from afar. They offered me a chance to start over, somewhere far away from the life I had known. It was a gift, one I had never expected, but one I couldn't refuse. And just like that, the decision was made. I was ready to move forward, to rebuild. The road to healing would take time, but I was prepared to walk it. As I packed my bags, ready to leave for this new opportunity, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I had made it through the worst of it. I had fought for myself, for my life. And now, it was time to build something new. But just as I was about to walk away from it all, the phone rang. It was her, my mother. "Before you leave, Lena, I need to see you. One last time."